Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and the tub that you see right here, it's a bin with some European night crawlers in it. And if you're familiar with my arrangement, you'll know that that is presently my oldest worm bin, and that just happened very recently. Up until now, the oldest worm bin was another European night crawler system, which I really always did kind of manage in tandem with that one. But now that that other bin has been retired, and the worms have been moved on to work in a brand new bin, this is now our oldest bin, and I'm going to check in on it today. I've got the information about that system here. It's on the same information board that I used when I harvested the older of the two bins. And that older bin was only a week older than this one. This bin is 175 days of age. It ran for 140 days as a composting bin, composting 15 portions of food. And after that, I set the system kind of onto a pause with no fresh feedings or anything. Over the past 5 weeks, 35 days, the system has been doing what I consider foraging. And at this point, usually the last phase is to migrate the worms out of the finished compost. Now, whether or not we're done foraging in that system over there or not remains to be seen. So I'm going to get the system up on the bench here, and we'll take a closer look. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that on the other bin, where the 14 days is all it took for the worms to be lured out of the finished compost, that is actually the standing record now in my wormery. Previously it was 1 day longer. It had taken another bin not too long ago 15 days for the worms to migrate out of the finished castings. Prior to that, that also not happening very long ago either, the record had been 18 days. So it just seems like, I don't know, I'm not sure why, but somehow I'm managing to complete these migrations of the worms out of the finished compost quicker and quicker each time. Just want to get this little guy off the plastic. There's another one. There's another one. I mean, my first impression just from looking at this material right after removing the plastic is that there's a good number of pretty good sized bits of stuff remaining in here. So my gut instinct is telling me that we're not venturing into migration starting today. And that's not too surprising. But one thing we can do here is something similar to what we've done in the past, is to try to help some of these drier bits of material that surround the edges, the places where the plastic wasn't really covering up as thoroughly as, you know, here in the middle. It allowed for a little bit of evaporation, a little bit of drying of the top surface. So I always feel like it's a good idea to, you know, not allow that same stuff to just perpetually be dry. Rotate it out, collect up all the stuff that's been sitting dry for the past period, whatever that last interval may have been since our last check-in, in this case a week, and get that stuff sunken down deeper into the material so that it can sort of gain some moisture from the surrounding materials. And starting with the submersion of that material is as good a place as any to begin. And I'll usually just dump it right down in the middle to make it really easy to know where I last left it. So I think what we're finding in here is some of that material that had been placed down in there previously. As you can see, there's still some pretty good sized residual chunks of bedding, even some food. There's even like a whole mango seed in here. Although I'm not sure if the seed is still intact on the inside. It might just be loaded with castings and worms. But obviously this husk, outer husk of the seed, is still kind of intact. And I think from the look of it, the seed itself is kind of on its way to being broken down. There's not much left of it. They're nibbling away at it. So sometimes I question whether it's a good idea to leave all these large chunks of stuff in the bin, all the stuff I picked off the surface, all the stuff that's already been submerged. You know, if I really want them to nibble down all of the really small scraps in the bin, all of the larger things that I can, you know, easily skim out, you know, might serve as less of a distraction if I removed it and let them really focus on all the small, tiny stuff that I really want them to break down, instead of them kind of dividing their attention between, you know, a lot of this large scraps versus a lot of the small scraps. You know, sometimes I see people actually run all of this stuff through a quick screening process. A lot of the screening process would actually capture the worms with the large fragments of material in the screen, and all the worms, all the large chunk stuff can be moved off to a fresh new place, and then all the fine stuff that flows through the screen would be, for the most part, castings, maybe some tiny worms, maybe some cocoons. You know, it's interesting to watch how different people process their materials. But I think in our case, we're just going to kind of stick to what we've been doing. Just taking all the large chunk materials and allowing the bin itself to eventually process it down and break it down. Just a little disheartening to look at a fairly fresh piece of material. Doesn't even really show any signs of breakdown. It really makes you wonder how long you're going to have to wait before something like that actually does get consumed. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just bugging myself out. But I'm going to just follow through with the game plan of getting that stuff submerged down low. The stuff that we collected off the top surface, all the stuff that's a little bit dry. And I'm even kind of wondering if a little shot of moisture into here might not hurt, you know. The foraging process is a nice concept, but I believe the worms can't really do it unless the materials that you want them to break down are sufficiently damp. And while things in here are kind of nice and damp, they probably could be a little bit more damp in order to help the breakdown process be a little bit more efficient, I think. You can see that all the material is extremely flaky, and it might appear dry. I can't tell on the camera if it does or not, but it certainly doesn't feel that way. It's not dry to the touch. It actually feels quite nice, damp and cool. But I do think that it would benefit the system to help it, you know, push on to the finish line if we were to at least hydrate the stuff that's been getting placed down into the middle. It's where the really dry stuff's been getting concentrated over the past few check-ins. So I think if we at least, you know, saturate the middle area where all those dry materials have been getting placed consistently for the past few check-ins, I think we'll be doing the system some good. So let me grab my water bottle and we'll do that now. So I'm just going to apply a good portion of what's in this bottle here. I think the castings have a really fantastic ability to sort of, you know, share that moisture content with the neighboring material. So I don't think there's too much worry about the material that I'm spraying here on the surface getting overly damp. I believe it is going to permit the dampness to soak through down into lower layers, into the material that's right below, and get to the stuff that really needs it, you know, the stuff that's going to really benefit from getting dampened, all these scraps of bedding and food and everything that we really want to see break down. Not to mention all of these stems of leaves everywhere, all these little sticks and stems. Those things aren't going to go anywhere either unless there's good moisture content in here. Well, I can hear my spray pump starting to draw air. It's a little bit left, but we did empty the majority of the bottle into this container. So I think it's time we could start covering up this pretty heavily dampened middle. Bring over some of this stuff that we excavated earlier. Out on the edges, I don't think we're going to find a lot of large chunk materials because I think in most occasions I Did try to collect up that sort of stuff as we probed through the material, and we would check it out and see how things looked. Luckily out here on these edges, things look pretty good as far as worms being there. There's good dampness. So it does seem like we're all set for good ongoing composting right out to the edge. And I just did find a pretty good sized chunk of stuff here. Maybe I can just sort of drive that right down into the middle where all that moisture is, where all the large chunk and dry materials have been placed. Let me oops, get that worm back in there. Let me just take a quick peek at how things look on the other side too, and then we'll be able to let this system continue on. And I don't think it's going to be done in 182 days like the other bin was. The other bin, I believe, did have a slightly larger population in it. Although I'm sometimes skeptical these days of that assessment, because that assessment may have been true at one point a while ago, but in more recent check-ins when I was working on these two bins, well, you know, this bin and the bin that I most recently retired, that used to be the sort of sister bin to this, I did sort of start feeling like there was not really an appreciable difference in the number of worms. And that does seem to be the case as I look through here. There is a fairly nice number of worms throughout this material. Everywhere I look, here again on the outer edges, luckily the material's nice and damp. The worms seem comfortable enough out here to be hanging out in it. So, I hope the moisture jolt we just gave this system is going to help drive things towards completion. So we'll check back in here again maybe in another week or so and see how things are progressing. But for now I think we're good to go with this little application of moisture. Quick little check-in to see how our worms are doing. And I wonder how much longer it's going to take. I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that. I'm just trying to submerge some of these larger chunks of material that seem like they would benefit from being submerged. So that's all I was doing, is pushing some stuff down. Now, I guess back goes the plastic layer, which does a really nice job keeping the moisture down within the system. It obviously has gaps on all four edges, allowing for some airflow and some drying, but luckily it's minimal. This is something else that would just really serve as a distraction, I believe, if it was down within the bin. So at one point I just pulled it out. It's been sitting out here on top. Same with this paper. And at this point these things are really doing little more than just providing darkness for the system, as is this piece of cardboard. You know, in the earlier days before the plastic was on here, maybe it was covered with multiple sheets of paper and cardboard and stuff like that, but at certain times it does seem more sensible to have plastic coverings, and in this case it seems to be the case as well. So I guess we're going to let this system continue on, and after I put this away, I've got a couple things to clean up around here, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. Before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to leave me a thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.